City of Adelaide Council meeting on Tuesday, 10th of August 2021. The Lord Mayor is in the chair. This council meeting will be streamed live and recorded for publishing to the internet. Please note that an audio and visual recording is being taken of this meeting. This means that your presence at and any contribution you make to the meeting may be collected, used, disclosed or published publicly by the council, including transferring outside Australia.
Council acknowledges that we're meeting on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains and pays respect to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land, and acknowledge that they're of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. We also extend that respect to Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations who are present today. The Council acknowledges the vision of Colonel William Light in determining the site for Adelaide and the design of the city with its 6 squares and surrounding belt of continuous parklands, which is recognised on the National Heritage List as one of the greatest examples of Australia's planning heritage.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon the works of the City of Adelaide. Direct and prosper its deliberations to the advancement of your glory and the true welfare of the people of this city. Amen.
Will all present stand in silence in the memory of those who gave their lives in defence of their country at sea, on land and in the air? Thank you, members. Please be seated. Members, I have no apologies or leave of absence this evening, which takes us to the confirmation of the minutes from the 13th of July 2021, and I'll look for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Mackie, and a seconder. Councillor Knoll. Members, if not, members sum up. To the vote, those in favour, those against, thank you, that is carried. There are no deputations this evening, nor are there petitions. Members, if we have council in the room, I'm going to bring the confidential items forward. So I will look for the motions to exclude the public. There are 4 items that are presented with a request for consideration in confidence, and each item, of course, requires a motion or decision to order the exclusion of the public to enable consideration in confidence. So if I could have a mover and a seconder for the order to exclude for 12.1.1, which is the Audit Committee report.
I just thought it might be proper, Lord Mayor, before we exclude the public, to acknowledge, I think we have a former Lord Mayor in the gallery. I think we've
in disguise.
We have 2 Wendy Chapmans gracing the chamber tonight. Just acknowledge that.
Evening, Wendy. Thank you for joining us. We have 4 items which will take hopefully not too long, but we will have to go into confidence for those items. You are most welcome to wait and rejoin us afterwards. So 12.1.1, which is the Audit Committee report of the 30th of July. I look for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Thank you to Councillor Mackie. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Knoll, would you like to sum up? Members to the vote, those in favour, those against, that is carried. I need a mover and a seconder for the order to exclude the public for 12.2.1, which open space and places for people grant submission. Thank you, Councillor Abrahimzadeh. Look for a seconder. Councillor Mackie. Councillor members, anyone wish to speak? Councillor Martin.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I have said this previously. I'll say it again, though. This item should not be heard in confidence. The problem in this is that, as has been suggested previously, the administration said there were 2 grounds for insisting on this going into our confidential process. The first is the content could reasonably be expected to confer a commercial advantage on a person with whom the council is conducting or proposing to conduct business, or to prejudice the commercial interest of the council. We're applying for a grant. There is no party mentioned in here. There is no third party whatever. And there is no commercial grounds for the other ground, which is that this needs to be heard in confidence because it being in public would on balance be contrary to the public interest. Now, there is no explanation in any of the documents at committee or at council about how it is against the public interest for the public to know which grants the City of Adelaide is seeking to apply for. This is, in my view, just secrecy for the sake of secrecy. And you well know what the newspaper thinks about Chamber of Secrets. It is simply, in my view, that we're seeking to avoid scrutiny and the embarrassment of people knowing what we're actually seeking funding for. And that ground is against the Local Government Act.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Members, would anybody else like to speak to that? Councillor Hyde.
Only to highlight that I don't think this chamber should make decisions based on what the newspaper thinks, but it should make decisions based on the best interests of its ratepayers. The public interest here is that we're entering a competitive grants process. Our grants may be disadvantaged by the premature sharing of what we're intending and applying for. Noting that, of course, we haven't finalised anything as yet. And the discussions that this chamber could have, if various members do or do not want to do particular things, could actually seriously damage the applications that we end up submitting. And so I think our ratepayers and the public interest is that we go into confidence in order to give our applications the best chance of succeeding in a competitive grant round. I know our ratepayers would be very upset if we made decisions at this point that would adversely affect the chances of those applications.
Thank you, Councillor Hyde. Members, Councillor Moran.
Yes, look, I don't follow the logic there. When you're competing for the same project, you obviously don't want to show your hand. And as we are promoting projects solely for the City of Adelaide and not for other council areas and vice versa, there is no competitive edge. We can't be beaten by a lower bid or pushed out. So I agree with Councillor Martin, there's absolutely no reason to keep, and I'm sure our ratepayers would like to know what we're bidding for.
Members, if not, I'll go to the mover to sum up. Councillor Evans. Members to the vote, those in favour, those against, that is carried. Members, we have a mover and seconder for exclusion of the public for 12.2.2, which is civic recognition. I'll look for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Hyde. Seconded, Councillor Abrahimzadeh. Members, if not, I'll go to the mover to sum up. Councillor Hyde. Members to the vote, those in favour, those against, that is carried. And 12.2.3, the cultural investigation. I'll look for a mover. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Seconder, Councillor Abrahimzadeh. Members, any discussion? Councillor Martin.
Yes, Lord Mayor. This matter, the cultural investigation, should not be covered by a cloak of secrecy. Not only the secrecy of what's being considered tonight, but the secrecy that surrounds this whole saga from the very beginning. It is a political stunt. It's politically motivated. It's an appalling train of events. And I think the public interest is served by this matter being public. And I will not support this confidentiality order.
Members, if not, to the Deputy Lord Mayor to sum up. Members to the vote, those in favour, those against, that is carried. Members of the public and staff, thanks for the attendance for the first part. We are going to bring forward 12.2.3, which is the cultural investigation. So I will ask any members of staff or the public who are not associated with that item on the agenda to please leave the chamber. The streaming will cease while Council considers this item on the agenda, and then we'll reopen and recommence streaming at the conclusion of the confidential items. Deputy Lord Mayor. once the doors are open. We're out of confidence. Thank you, members. We are out of confidence, and I'm going to call out to the following items on block. So, members, 9.1. Thank you. 9.2. Councillor Martin. 10.1. 10.2. Sorry, 10.1. Councillor Donovan. 10.2. 10.3. 10.4. 10.5. 10.6. 10.6. Councillor Donovan, just checking. 10.7. 10.8. And 10.9. So, members, I need a mover to pass 9.1, 10.2, 10.3, 10.4, 10.5. If I could have a mover. Thank you, Councillor Abrahimzadeh, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Ho.
I called out 10.5.
Okay. Apologies, Councillor Martin, I didn't have that recorded. So, members, it's 9.1, 10.2, 10.3, 10.4. Councillor Abrahimzadeh, are you good with that? Councillor Ho, are you still happy to be the seconder for that? Members, if not, we'll go to the members to sum up. Members to the vote, those in favour, those against. That is passed. That takes us to 9.2, the Audit Committee report, the 30th of July, and I'll look for a mover from the floor. Councillor Martin, are you moving?
Yep.
And seconded, Councillor Abrahimzadeh. Councillor Martin, did you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, just very briefly, Lord Mayor, to say that the Audit Committee is indeed a valuable organisation. This report that they've prepared and the accompanying papers are of great interest to me, and I suspect all of the elected members, particularly in relation to reviewing, and I understand it was an internal review, the way in which our administration has been managing timesheets, the failure of the system to manage timesheets, so that we're not recording it properly. Flex time isn't monitored by supervisors all the time. 3/4 of our employees only, or less than that, are completing their timesheets. Only 20% are actually reviewed by supervisors. We have employees who've got negative 100 hours of flexi time. That is, they owe us 2.5 weeks or more. The wrong leave has been requested and allocated. So, for example, people are being given annual leave when they should be given some other kind of leave, flexi leave, for example. And additionally, we're actually paying leave loading, according to the report. We're paying leave loading to people who actually aren't entitled to it. But I am delighted to say that it is in hand, that the auditors and indeed our report authors have prepared a timeline to address all of these issues. And I just want to say thank you to the Audit Committee and to those involved in the report for correcting what is something that needs correcting.
Councillor Martin, Councillor Abrahimzadeh, do you wish to speak? Members? If not, I'll go back to Councillor Martin to sum up.
Summed up.
Members to the vote, those in favour, those against, that is carried. Members, that takes us to 10.1, which is the request for parkland parking in Josie Ages Park, Wicker Park, New Wirra, Park 22. And I'll look for a mover, Councillor Hyde, and I'll look for a seconder, Councillor Knoll. Councillor Hyde, did you wish to speak to it?
No, thank you.
Councillor Knoll. Members, Councillor Donovan.
Just briefly, Lord Mayor, as has been noted in the report, of course, we wouldn't usually approve additional parking on parklands, but these are extenuating circumstances. I just seek clarification that it's noted in the report that any remediation costs would be covered by the RH and NHS, but also that if there is payment to the Horticultural Association or Society for the use of the COVID vaccine facility on site on their location, that we would be recovering a similar cost for use of our site.
I will ask for clarification for you, Councillor Donovan.
Through you, Lord Mayor, the arrangement in place is, firstly, they do cover the cost of remediation, so that's clear within the report. The other thing is, in regards to parking, it's not about what they are recovering, but what we will cover, or what they will cover for the use of the parklands. So there will be a minimum cost, and that is in regards to service, remediation, staffing, so we at least cover our full cost. There is no cost back to the community.
Certainly, I understand that, and that's all covered within the report. However, if they are receiving payment for the use of the vaccine hub on their site, I'm seeking clarification that we would seek a similar cost on our site. Given they are receiving payment, possibly, that's not outlined within the report, would we be seeking a similar payment from them so that they're not essentially gaining the benefit of our use at no cost, given we wouldn't usually provide it at all in any instance, but of course this is extenuating circumstances and we're all contributing to supporting the vaccination effort. But if they are receiving compensation, I would hope that we would similarly be recuperating that cost that they are gaining from, I presume, the state government potentially.
Thank you, Director.
Through you, Lord Mayor. Firstly, we can take it as an undertaking to go back to them to ask if that is appropriate, but note parking on the parklands, we'll also be charging a fee, which comes back to council as well, whereas they're not actually attracting a fee for that land, but we will go back to see that we have got a similar sort of arrangement so that we're compensated appropriately.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. If not, I'll go back to Councillor Hyde to sum up. Members to the vote, those in favour, those against. Councillor Martin, are you voting?
Yeah, yes, I'll vote for it. That's right. I was distracted.
I'm sorry, I can't hear what you're saying.
I said I'm sorry, I was distracted. Yes, I'm voting for it.
Voting for it? Thank you. Members, that takes us to 10.5 on the agenda, Planning and Design Code Update and Future Priorities. I'll look for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Abrahimzadeh. And seconded, Councillor Knoll. Councillor Abrahimzadeh, did you wish to speak to it?
All right, thank you.
Councillor Knoll. Members? Councillor Martin.
Yeah, look, just briefly, Lord Mayor. Again, and I've thanked the administration a couple of times tonight, but this one particularly for their work. This has starkly drawn to our attention the modern-day planning disaster that is called the Planning and Development Code, which in my view is misnamed. It should be more like the complete absence of workable planning and design codes. It has undone a raft of measures that the City of Adelaide has fought for a very long time. It has wound the clock back. And I just can't believe that controls on everything from odours emanating from properties to guaranteed sunshine for solar panels to standards for the illumination of lights coming from shop advertising, access to driveways, all of them have been abandoned or almost abandoned. And within the Adelaide parklands, as I understand it, and the administration might correct me if I've got it wrong, but as I understand it now, where a development has previously been the subject of consultation, I think it now says that there is no trigger for a consultation if the development has been anticipated in the zone. That is to say, it's in the community land management plan. And so in part 2, where you remember, Lord Mayor, that there was a push by some members of council to give the park to the crows,
Councillor, I'm sorry, there wasn't a push by members of council to give the parklands to the crows.
Well, it was.
Councillor,
would you like?
I would like you to correct that.
I'm happy.
Can we talk to the motion, please?
Well, yes, I am. those details for the club rooms for the Crows are still in the community land management plan, which we went out to consultation on. So it's a bit of a debacle that has the potential to, as I said, dismantle standards. And the whole world, as I've said previously, can now see what a mess the RAN, the Wetherell and the Marshall governments have created, and a mess that we will pay for in the City of Adelaide for years to come.
Members? If not, I'll go back to Councillor Abraham today to sum up. Members to the vote, those in favour, those against, that is carried. Members, takes us to 10.6, which is the progress of motion by elected members, and I look for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Abraham today, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Members, Councillor Abraham today, do you wish to speak to it? Councillor Knoll. Councillor Donovan.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. I just wanted to check the progress on a motion that has ID number 19643, re the city walking strategy. So the action that has been proposed, or the comments I should say, says improvements to infrastructure for people walking will be considered through the development of the Transportation Asset Management Plan, AMP. The draft of this AMP is expected to be completed in mid-2022. So this is a motion from approximately 2 years ago, 10th of September 2019. So I just wanted to check, is that the proposed action to the motion, or is that an incidental action that is related to the motion?
Thank you, Councillor Donovan. I will ask Councillor Director Devonish, if you would mind answering that question. Sorry.
Through you, Chair. Sorry, Councillor, could you just repeat the question for me?
Sure.
Just trying to understand what you're seeking.
Sure. So the motion from 2 years ago, so 19643, regarding the city walking strategy, and I can read it out. Note to the recent data compiled on pedestrian safety within the City of Adelaide. Note to the current opportunity to provide policy input to complement, inform the integrated transport plan and city access strategy, and requests administration prepare a detailed walking strategy, including a peer review of the walking strategies of other cities, e.g. Melbourne and Sydney, to improve Adelaide's walkability and livability. And the comments related to the progress on that motion are improvements to infrastructure for people walking will be considered through the development of the Transportation Asset Management Plan, AMP. The draft of this AMP is expected to be completed in mid-2022. So I just wanted to understand, is that a related piece of work, or is that the proposed final action to that motion?
Through the Chair, thanks for the question. It is a related piece of work. So as you may be aware, there are a number of transport and traffic integrated studies that need to be completed to inform the asset management plans. So I would say that we're leaning on those strategies to actually inform how we bring the asset management plan for pedestrian and other integrated transport plans back to Council for endorsement. So in terms of the timing, that sounds appropriate in terms of timing, but it is related to the asset management plans.
So to clarify, there will still be, as the motion requests, a city walking strategy that is separate to the development of the Transportation Asset Management Plan.
Through the Chair, that's my understanding, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Perhaps if there's further clarification, we can take that offline. Members, are there any other questions? If not, I'll go back to the move to sum up. Members to the vote, those in favour, those against, that is carried. Members, that takes us to 10.7, which is the Code of Conduct outcome. Councillor Hyde.
Lord Mayor, I think this is the correct time to exit the meeting. I will declare a material conflict and I'll just speak outside.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. I wish to move an alternative motion. or a variation, whichever you prefer.
Lord Mayor, can I, before Councillor Martin does that, Councillor Martin, can I clarify whether Councillor Mackie has to be in the room as well, or because it relates to both of them in this matter?
Councillor Mackie?
Just answer the question.
Through you, Lord Mayor, I don't believe that I have a conflict of interest.
That's up to you to make that decision, Councillor.
Yeah, I'm through you again, Lord Mayor. I don't believe that I have a conflict of interest. I raised an issue, it's been investigated. I'm not the subject of the motion.
Okay. Councillor Martin, if
No,
you'd
that's
like
right.
to
Yes, alternative
dictate
motion.
slowly, please.
Yes, I can. Replace 3 with in accordance with 2.25 of the Code. And clause 43 of standing orders. Oh, okay, sorry, I couldn't see that there down the bottom. Standing orders determines that Councillor Hyde makes a verbal apology of no less than 1 minute to the elected body at its next scheduled voting meeting in September 2021.
And I'll look for a seconder.
That replaces 3.
Okay. And I'll look for a seconder.
Well, it's going to lapse.
There being no seconder, that lapses and we go back to the original motion.
So,
Members, I'll look for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Abrahimzadeh, and a seconder. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Councillor Abrahimzadeh, did you wish to speak to it? Deputy Lord Mayor?
Yes, I do.
Could you...
sorry, I would like to speak to this one. And
could you put your microphone on, please,
sorry,
Councillor?
I thought I had. Understandable that take into account what the findings here and understanding the what they have found within the investigation. However, I just want to point out that Councillor Hyde actions were as a result of him working hard for the community. He is there to always defend the businesses that did approach him before the meeting. It was right before Christmas. It was a special meeting was called right before Christmas. So therefore it was not a full chamber, so there wasn't enough of because if I was there, I would definitely have voted for his motion, but I was unable to attend because I know also how much the businesses were against changing the recommendation that Councillor Mackie wanted to change the time against what was originally proposed by administration. It was clear from the response that
we're not actually debating the contents of the report.
No, I'm just saying that
it's really whether we are voting for that, and if there's anything else that we want to ask Councillor Hyde to do as a result of the investigation.
I just want to state in this that his actions were justified in regards to the event.
In your opinion?
In my opinion.
Members, were there any other speakers? Councillor Moran, I'm sorry, I did write you down.
The door to that.
I'm going to close the door to that. We are talking. There has been an investigation, and we have that before us in terms
That's
of
right.
the
And
determination.
it is against local government regulations to collapse a quorum. Councillor Hyde announced he was going to collapse the quorum.
Thank you.
It wasn't because he was tired. He said, if my amendment doesn't get up, me and my seconder will collapse the quorum and leave. So it's nothing to do with tiredness or working for his community. He announced he was going to collapse the quorum, and that is a severe breach of local government regulations.
Thank you, and we have got an investigation that is to be noted in front of us. I have Councillor Martin, then Councillor Kerr.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Look, I am surprised that the Deputy Lord Mayor is saying it's okay to collapse a quorum. It is, and she did say that, as much as she might deny it. But what does concern me is that we have a report here in which the councillor, Councillor Hyde, says that he did not intend to collapse the quorum, and yet the investigation has found at 24 minutes and 34 seconds in the tape he intended to collapse the quorum. And then, having told that to the
point of order, Lord Mayor. Point of order is
having told that to the investigation.
Yes, sorry. No. If there's a point of order, you do actually have to stop until I find out what the point of order is, Councillor. What is your point of order?
Is this speaking to the motion, Lord Mayor?
Yes, it is.
My understanding is that we are actually voting on noting that the investigation has been conducted, the investigation has had that finding, and we are now voting on noting the report, not discussing the report, but noting the report and determining actually at number 3 what Councillor Hyde then does next. So I will ask you to speak to the motion.
As you did Councillor Kouros.
And I did take governance advice and ask her to stop speaking to the report. We have got an investigation that has been completed. We are now noting.
Well, Lord Mayor, perhaps if I could ask the administration, given that the investigation found that Councillor Hyde had intended to collapse the meeting, that he declined to admit that he had done that, and he has subsequently told the Sunday Mail newspaper that he did it because he was fighting for his local community. Where does that leave this process?
We can actually ask governance. Do you want me to go to? Who am I going to? Mick.
Through you, Lord Mayor. It's not really for the council to debate the content of the report. The investigation has been an independent one. The findings are there, and therefore the only options available for the council are to, 1, note the findings, and 2, to determine what actions, if any, the council believes ought to be taken in relation to those findings. It is not to determine whether those findings are appropriate or otherwise.
Well, I thank the administration for that advice, Lord Mayor, and if I can ask for one other question. The administration advises that 2.25 of the Code, Clause 43 of Standing Orders, prescribes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 possible responses to a code of conduct.
Correct. That
is upheld. Having a chat with the Lord Mayor doesn't appear in any of those. Where does that come from? That is the recommendation that the councillor has a chat with the Lord Mayor, who is going to remind him of his obligations. I can't see that anywhere in...
Yes, thank you, Councillor Martin. We're just trying to find the relative clause. Mick, can you reply to that, or was it from the report itself, from the investigation itself?
Through you, Lord Mayor, that was one of the recommendations of the investigators, who were Keller D. Jones lawyers, and that's been transposed into the recommendation to council. It is this particular question was asked, and the advice received was that it is within the authority of the council to make that decision in relation to paragraph 3.
And may I ask the administration what were the other recommendations in terms of penalties?
Well, the report's in front of you, Councillor, so...
I didn't see it, Lord Mayor. I'm happy for the administration.
Page 112,
yep.
6.3.
And so then, where is the advice that this is consistent with the Act? I'm sorry, I just can't see it.
So I will go to Mick for an answer to that. So it is a recommendation of the report, Mick.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The recommendations in the report reflect exactly what the investigators recommended as part of their findings. And in relation to my comment that this is within this particular part 3 of the recommendation is within the purview of the council, it was a question that I asked subsequent to the report being sent to me.
Oh, okay, I understand. Thank you.
Councillor Kerr. Councillor Kerr, thank you.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. As we are debating, perhaps unnecessarily, but regardless, we've entered debate. We are determining whether particular number 3 is a reasonable response to the finding. I would point out to councillors that the context in which the conduct occurred was that a motion brought forward by...
No, we're not talking the context. I'm sorry,
with respect,
Councillor...
Lord Mayor, as a point of clarification...
Point of order, Lord Mayor. Point of order. You have already reminded the meeting
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Thank you, Councillor Martin.
As a point of clarification then, Lord Mayor, because the occasion of this motion has been used to impugn the integrity of Councillor Hyde, it should be noted for the record... It should be noted for the record that Councillor Hyde...
I will ask you to sit down and stop speaking. We are talking to the investigation. The only thing that we are determining is part 3 of the motion before you. If you have anything that you would like to talk to,
yes.
If not, then please sit down.
Lord Mayor, I'm speaking to part 3.
Yep.
And I'm speaking to whether part 3 is the appropriate sanction.
Correct.
For Councillor Hyde.
Correct.
Am I entitled to speak on that, Lord Mayor?
You are. We're not talking about the investigation, and we are not talking about the breach.
I'm not speaking about the investigation, Lord
Correct.
Mayor. I'm speaking about whether number 3 is the appropriate sanction for Councillor Hyde. And with respect, Lord Mayor, to whether or not that is the appropriate sanction for Councillor Hyde, I would put to councillors that this is the appropriate sanction. This and only this is the appropriate sanction because the conduct of Councillor Hyde occurred in response to an attempt.
Thank you, Councillor. No. Sorry, you can stop there. If you actually are in favour of that response, thank you. I will take that as you having spoken.
With respect, Lord Mayor,
with respect, Councillor Kerr, that door was cracked open. I am closing it. We are not talking about the investigation. We are simply determining what penalty that the council would like.
Correct.
And the finding from Kelledy Jones determined that part 3 is the sanction.
Lord Mayor, I struggle to see how I can speak to part 3 without actually delivering context to part 3.
We don't need context. We are noting the investigation and we are talking to the penalty in part 3. Thank you, Councillor.
Lord Mayor, am I allowed to clarify what exactly I had said? Because I feel as if it was taken out of it was misconstrued by Councillor Martin, and I don't want to be misrepresented by...
If there's a point of clarification, please. If you start talking about the investigation, I'll ask you to sit down as well.
Okay, I just want to clarify what I said, and I'm not allowed to repeat that.
You can try.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Members, Councillor Mackie.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Only to acknowledge the work of the administration in advancing the investigation and to indicate that I'll be voting in favour of the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Mackie. Members, if there's no others, I will go back to Councillor Abraham today to sum up. Members to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you, members. That takes us, actually, if we could ask for Councillor Hyde to come back in. That takes the just waiting for Councillor Hyde. Has somebody gone to get him? Can you stay there for this one, Mick? Members, the next item on the agenda is 10.8, and I look for a mover, which is simply to note. Thank you, Councillor Mackie, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Abrahimzadeh. Councillor Mackey, did you wish to speak to it?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Only very briefly to acknowledge the extraordinary circumstances of the by-election, which are barely more than a year ago I found myself in a similar situation contesting a by-election. I want to acknowledge all 7 candidates and the efforts that they went to reach our community, and I also want to just recognise that Councillor-elect Kieran Snape is in the chamber, and congratulate him.
Didn't even see you there.
And look forward to him joining us on this merry journey.
Join us officially next week, Councillor-elect. Councillor Abrahimzadeh, did you wish to speak? Members, summed up to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you. That is carried. Members, that takes us to 10.9, which is the report Reignite the City. And I'll look for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Abrahimzadeh. And I will look for a seconder. Councillor Knoll, sorry, I saw your hand up first. Councillor Abrahimzadeh, do you wish to speak to it? Councillor Knoll, did you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I'll say a few words. First of all, I greatly appreciate the work that the administration is doing, and AIDA, etc., to find ways to enhance, the opportunities for business and bring people back into the city. And I just look at it, and there's just a few thoughts. It's around when we're looking at what opportunities we have, and it's just, I suppose, it's a little bit of a commentary and also, in a sense, a question to think about it. Is that when we're segmenting the businesses within Adelaide, and which segments of the community is suffering the most. And I do consider, the restaurants that have had a really hard time, and so all of the entertainment sector. So certainly there is a lot of assistance needed there. And I think we also need to take in consideration too that the daytime economy has also suffered. People are avoiding the city, for their every day, whether it's workers, etc. And how do we actually engage with that? I mean, I do note that we have in here the digital marketing marketplace, etc. I mean, that is interesting, and I'm just as you expand that, I suppose for offline, that if I can have an understanding of what we're wanting to deliver through that and how we envisage that as being an opportunity to get out to the wider community. It's only because, like, we're looking at the Central Market doing what their home delivery service, and how can we use that better, and how can we really, that as an opportunity for businesses to get that to that customer that hasn't been coming into town, and how we can do that better across a various variety of mediums. Also, I suppose we'll be looking at how can we better promote our businesses, in the sense that we're trying to do the Fridays, etc., as an after work entertainment. How can we better promote that through the businesses and that as well, so that they are assisting and supporting that, because that is at least a way that we can enhance the visitation of those sort of social areas within the city. And I know it's got to be one of the questions, but now we have working towards 75%. It's about, when we're talking about our car parking opportunities, etc., that we're doing it at times where our businesses can absorb that number of people. Simply because if we're putting an extra capacity in a car parking sense, are they able to take that opportunity as within the businesses? And with 75%, I think it's not too bad. But is that and something that we need to look at, just to make sure that we are reflecting their ability to take the offer that we're proposing for them and the benefits we're proposing for them? So just to make sure that all this good work we are doing, that it actually reflects in opportunity, and that we are using the money that we are foregoing and all the rest for the best interest of the community without wasting it.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Members, would anybody else like to speak? Thank you. Councillor Donovan.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Similarly, I echo Councillor Knoll's comments about the great work done by administration. I just make the one point that I absolutely shake my head at the idea of fee-free parking. given all we know, all of the evidence that shows that it does have a substantial impact on changing behaviour. The behaviour it changes is that more people drive. There is not increased visitation. Visitation is not impacted, so parking is neither a mediator nor a moderator, so making it cheaper does not increase visitation to the city. It just means more people choose to drive. So most people do not, the majority of people travelling to the city do not drive at present. So what we know is it increases the number of people who choose to drive rather than use other forms of transport. That evidence is available and abundant. So I do shake my head that we once again go to the perception that that will increase visitation. Other than that, great work by administration.
I think actually to that point, Councillor Donovan, it would be really good if we can actually check the data against increasing under these COVID conditions to actually make sure that we do get an increase in visitation.
That would be very useful to examine, Lord Mayor. The problem being if we have multiple variables being adjusted simultaneously, we cannot pull out a single factor, whereas multiple previous research that has been undertaken has shown, and particularly in COVID times, that it does not impact on visitation.
Now I had Councillor Martin, I saw your hand go up, and then Councillor Hyde.
Just briefly, Lord Mayor, it's hard to argue against any help for business in the city. I do understand Councillor Donovan's point, and I understand also what Councillor Knoll is saying, and I ask all elected members, and I ask this seriously, to consider whether or not there are ways of assisting non-hospitality businesses. Much of this is directed at non-hospitality business, and of course I accept that we do need to help them. But there are people in small business in the city, we've read about them in the Advertiser, I've heard, everybody's heard them speak to us about how nothing seems to fit their circumstances. And ironically, I was talking to a small business owner in North Adelaide at the weekend who's doing it very tough, and ironically tougher still because of the Van Gogh event that we facilitated in North Adelaide by providing the space to the organisers. It's certainly drawing people to hospitality businesses, but as the non-hospitality business owner said to me, well, my business is down to about 30% of normal because people can't park here and their habits are changing, I'm losing that sort of trade. A shoe store owner said to me similarly, look, you know, what can you do to help us? And honestly, I don't know the answer. I did propose a rate remission scheme or something like that, which this chamber rejected, but we really do need to think about what we can do to help small business, non-hospitality, who are doing it tough. And I would welcome any proposal from any member that would assist them in some way.
Councillor Hyde, then Councillor Mackie. Councillor Mackie.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Overall, I'm supportive and I will be voting for this recommendation. And I do acknowledge Councillor Donovan's points of view regarding parking, but I also understand that the realpolitik is the City of Adelaide is in the car parking business. One of the assets that we have to leverage to influence discretionary behaviour for visitors and to attract visitors is to leverage that latent parking infrastructure that is sitting there. We all know that by and large on-street car parking after 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. I think in a couple of areas is free. A question though, it won't affect my vote, but we're talking about a 1 month parking initiative of free evening parking 6 p.m. to midnight. Given that the substantial visitor attraction proposition for the evenings and nighttime economy is food and beverage, and therefore the dance between the responsible consumption of alcohol and the choice to drive a vehicle into the city. What happens on a Saturday morning if somebody has come in, availed themselves of the free off-street car parking in a U-Park station on the Friday evening, and because they have reached a point of maybe not wanting to risk driving, leave their vehicle overnight and return to the city in the morning.
If it's on a Friday night, given the weekend parking is free on a Saturday, Sunday, there won't be any penalty.
Good point, Lord Mayor.
So just as
I support the recommendation.
Members, any other members? If not, I will actually add my thanks. Sorry, Councillor Hyde.
I was just trying to find some data, given Helen wanted to mention data. This is an excellent report, Lord Mayor. And the reason I wanted to actually speak to it was to commend the administration for bringing something which had such overwhelming positive feedback from residents and businesses. What we do know is in Greater Metropolitan Adelaide, 85% of every trip that happens, 85% of everything where someone is trying to move from point A to point B happens in a motor vehicle. Now, I'm not saying that's right, I'm not saying that's wrong, maybe it's bad for emissions, but that's the reality. 85% of trips happen in a motor vehicle. And so for us to assist those motor vehicles to come into the city, to come into our car parks, to then exit their vehicle, go and shop in our businesses, on Rundle Mall, along our main streets, to stop at an eatery as well, all of those things, to go to a small bar in the evening in particular with this initiative. Anything that encourages that is absolutely fantastic. And I would put it to members that nothing has done more to buoy the confidence of businesses in the city than seeing this initiative, because they know, because their customers tell them that the number one issue with Adelaide and commerce in Adelaide is getting here. They love the city, it's a beautiful city, they take no issue with that. They have an issue getting in, and when they get here, finding a car park that is convenient. Now again, Adelaide's a little bit of a special place. People want to get a car park exactly where they want to go, not very far away from that. Maybe over time we need to break that down. Over time it'd be great to have lots of good public transport as well, and it's unfortunate that we haven't got much control over that policy area, because I don't dispute that public transport could move orders of magnitude more people into the city. But as far as the levers that we've got goes, this is an excellent one. Furthermore, it's really encouraging to see the administration looking to pull back barriers to investment, barriers to economic activity in the city. The cost of this report, some of these initiatives go for 12 months, some of them don't. The cost of this report will take a hit, and we need to take that hit for our ratepayers, having by and large fixed the budget over the last 6 months and our debt position over 10 years. This is actually something we can afford to do now, whereas before we couldn't. And if it does end up us going into a deficit, this is something that's worth going into a deficit for. But I would just make the point to the administration that I'd be really keen to see the success of this initiative measured and measured well, so that we understand what works and what doesn't work, because this is not a massive hit overall to our revenue. Notwithstanding car parking, I won't put that out there yet, but some of these other removals of permit fees and fee structures and what have you, if that assists economic activity in the city, then why would we not reduce that permanently in some way going forward?
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Yes, thanks, Lord Mayor. Yes, the car parking issue has been spoken about, I think, enough. It is reality. It is how things operate. We know the reality of parking and business and commerce. I will just commend the administration. They have been quite rightly lauded in the newspaper for this whole suite of initiatives. I think it speaks to an administration that is in tune with the needs of businesses in the city, in the CBD. And to reiterate the point that Councillor Hyde has made, the other structural change that will be needed going forward is something that is more the prerogative of councillors, and that is to ensure that we instill a lowering of the cost base going forward. I know that you have yourself flagged red tape and costs as a as something we can fix more permanently, but it is something that will need to be done. I would put to councillors, we need a renewed effort from us to ensure that we are lowering the cost base for businesses across the board. That is the number one way to help both non-hospitality and hospitality businesses together.
Thank you, members. Look, I also want to add my thanks to the administration for several things. When we went into the lockdown, it was a very smooth transition for all the staff to work from home, even though the exec met on the Sunday of that lockdown to start working on this. It was equally a very smooth transition for our administration to come back to work, so it was some great work. I think this does touch many sectors, so as well as hospitality, it does touch retail, particularly for that weekend spend, personal trainers, entertainment, events, construction, main streets, musicians. We've got the business support packages. We have things in place for both the Central Market and the Rundle Mall. And I too actually had some great comments from small businesses today who are just so delighted that the council is taking this initiative. I do actually want to thank, I know that each of the teams, each of the directors brought forward initiatives from their teams, and it is something that we have, we are all actually on the same page when it comes to actually making it a lower cost and less red tape in the city. I do think it would be great as we monitor the various initiatives going forward to make sure that we're getting best bang for buck and actually to see what we can continue going forward. So I do commend this report to you. With that, I'll go back to the mover, which is Councillor Abrahimzadeh, to sum up.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I echo your thoughts and other members. I would like to acknowledge our administration for springing into action. They were very proactive in bringing this to us. As we have seen here, there are a number of initiatives, be it parking or business support packages or business advocacy, main streets, permits, temporary activation, etc., etc. It's good to see that administration have identified which levers we have at our disposal. There are certain things that we just don't have any control over. We know that to this day there are federal government agencies or state government agencies or even some of the bigger corporates that have their headquarters overseas or in Victoria or in New South Wales. And their offices here in Adelaide still operate under the main company policy. So working from home, that's something that we unfortunately don't have any control over, or even in terms of people using public transport. It's one thing to for the state government to go out and push out these masks, but then when you jump on a train or a tram or a bus, you're wedged right next to one another, and so for some people that's a bit uncomfortable. But going back to this report, I can see that our administration have left no stone unturned, and I do commend this report to the Chamber.
Members to the vote, those in favour, those against, that is carried. Could I have that recorded as unanimous, please? Members, item 13 on tonight's agenda is my report for August. I think we were stating the obvious, being a challenging month for the city with the lockdown severely impacting the city businesses as well as our artists and creatives. Prior to the lockdown, we were celebrating the launch of the city's new inaugural winter festival, Illuminate Adelaide, and on the 16th of July I hosted a morning tea at the Adelaide Town Hall for the co-founders and creative directors, Rachel Azzopardi and Lee Cumberledge, as well as many of the artists that were involved. The festival got up to a wonderful start. I hope everybody had the chance to see the free City Lights Trail, light cycles in the Botanic Gardens and the zoo creatures, which successfully were bringing lots of people into the city. Van Gogh Live at 88 O'Connell Street is continuing to be a hit and has been extended to the 22nd of August, as has light cycles at the Botanic Gardens. I've had lots of feedback from traders on O'Connell Street that they've seen a boost to trade as a result of the event, and many of them are taking part in Council's Light Up O'Connell initiative and offering discounts to Van Gogh Alive ticket holders. On the 1st of August, I unveiled our city's latest public artwork called Obtuse, which was created by Jason Sims. The City of Adelaide commissioned this permanent light-based public artwork as a contribution to the inaugural Illuminate Adelaide Festival. The artwork shines a light on our iconic market precinct and contributes to the City of Adelaide and Renewal SA's partnership project, which is Market to Riverbank. Obtuse is the second piece by Jason, who created the first, which is called Acute, already installed in Bank Street. The pieces are together two sculptures that work as a pair to connect Market to Riverbank. On August the 4th, I had the honour of hosting a farewell dinner for His Excellency Hugh Van Ley AC, the 35th Governor of South Australia, and Mrs Lanley, to thank them for their contribution to Adelaide. His Excellency has done a remarkable job since taking office in 2014 and has played an important role in the civic life and beyond of the City of Adelaide. And I thank all members who were able to attend. Of course, we continued with the election during lockdown, the second time this term, under very trying circumstances, and next week we will welcome our new member-elect, Kieran Snape, to the chamber. Members, tonight and just a moment ago, we approved many initiatives as part of Reignite the City, and it's clear that our focus must be on the CBD and North Adelaide businesses. We'll continue to work with the state government and the Adelaide peak bodies and employees to bring people safely back to the city. We know that we have plenty on offer, and I look forward to greater prosperity in the coming months. If I could have someone move that the report be accepted. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Seconded, Councillor Hyde. Members, those in favour? Thank you. That is carried. Members, item 14 on tonight's agenda is the reports from council members, and I look for a mover. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Members? Deputy Lord Mayor? No? If not, I'll go to the members to sum up. Members to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you, former Lord Mayor Chapman. That is carried. Members, we have 3 questions on notice tonight. With the Leader of the Chamber will take it as read. Members, just a quick show of hands, take them as read. Thank you very much. That is item 15.1, 15.2, 15.3. That takes us to item 16. Are there any questions without notice? I have Councillor Donovan and then Councillor Hyde. Councillor Donovan.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Could we get an update on the progress of the City Access Strategy?
Thank you, Councillor Donovan. I will go to Director Devenish.
Through you, Chair, I'm happy to take that on notice, Councillor, and provide an update to all elected members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hyde. Did you have a question without notice?
Yes, I did, Lord Mayor. Just regarding the... it was actually with respect to 10.8, but I didn't get the opportunity to ask a question. And congratulations to Mr Snape in the audience here. Looking at the election results, envelopes returned 4897, envelopes rejected 414. Could the administration detail to elected members the classes of rejection and the quantum of envelopes in each class, just because it wasn't in the report?
Amanda?
Through you, presiding member, we'll have to come back with that information.
Yep, I expect it.
We'll distribute that to all members.
Yeah, certainly. Separate to that, I was wondering, through Lord Mayor, if administration could provide an update on something I've asked about previously, which is the reinstatements happening in the city. How many reinstatements there are, as in where utilities come and rip up the sidewalk.
Sidewalk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could the administration update us on how many reinstatements they've fixed since the question was asked, how many reinstatements are remaining, and how many invoices they've been able to collect?
Thank you, Councillor.
Roads and footpaths.
Director Devenish, take that one on notice.
Through the Chair, yeah, happy to take that on notice and provide that information.
If Lord Mayor, if there could be any sort of qualitative update and the actual figures themselves, could we take on notice, as in, so what actually have we done?
Yep, so we've got that. So the reinstatements, how many to go? And
yeah, but if, I'm saying if the director is able to say we've put someone on the job and then, or is there no update?
I think it's been said that we'll take that on notice and we'll distribute all of that to members.
Okay, certainly. Thank you.
Are there any further questions without notice? If not, members, I actually might I think we might have a short break before we go to motions, if that's all right. So could I suggest, I'm just trying to see what time it is, could I suggest, is 15 or 20 minutes? Is 20 minutes all right? 20. Is 20 minutes all right? Thank you, members. 20 minutes. I'll see you back in the chamber at 7:45. So that takes us to item 17.1, Councillor Martin, motion on notice, revocation of decision of Council at Adelaide Aquatic Centre Capital Works. Councillor Martin.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. Do I require a second?
You do. Thank you, Councillor Moran.
Okay, this rescission motion is to revoke a decision that was taken, I recall, in the early hours of the morning on April 13th, when only I, the Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillors Hyde, Abrahimzadeh, Noel, Ho and Kira were on the floor of Council, and only I voted against it. It withdrew $16 million in funding for renewals at the Aquatic Centre between now and the end of the decade, many of them for vital projects, including replacing the centre's water filtration system, boiler, and getting rid of the concrete decay in the place. It also predicated on an inference that the state government would fund most of the cost of a new centre, which is in paragraph 1 of the motion, promised to keep the centre functioning, but only until June next year. Only until June next year, without a viable funding model for its continuation. Now, on the one hand, we're saying no more renewals at the centre, they're withdrawn from the long-term financial plan, and on the other, no guarantee that we will allow the centre to function beyond June. And that suggests the loss of a very big, well-used and much-loved community facility. And curiously, it didn't even rate a mention in our budget consultation documents that went out. We didn't ask people, how do you feel about us not supporting the Aquatic Centre by the end of this financial year? Now, this has come as a great shock to users at the centre and to ratepayers. They ask, not unreasonably, why would you want to run down or even close the centre when you're looking for funding to assist with the construction of a new aquatic centre? They all say, we've seen the plans, we like them, they've been well publicised, but most people want to see the old centre functioning until a new one is built. And indeed, the question is, why can't we do that? It seems to me it's pretty sensible. Now, I understand and I get the political reality that the 13th of April was about removing debt from our budget, with the consequence that people are able to claim that we have this financial turnaround, but the consequence looks to many of my ratepayers like they're going to lose their aquatic centre that we know is used, just like our libraries, just like our parklands, just like our mall, by hundreds of thousands of people, some of them from the City of Adelaide and some from without. Now, I ask members to support this, and I will say a little more in summing up, if I may.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Moran, did you wish to speak? Reserve your right. Councillor...
Sorry, Lord Mayor, a point of clarification. Councillor Martin has claimed that this motion removes $16 million of budgeted capital works in the Aquatic Centre. It does not remove $16 million of budgeted works in the Aquatic Centre. It only removes those works for years 24, 25 and onwards in the long-term financial plan. So just to clarify that point for the benefit of members. Well, and furthermore, and you can take this now, Lord Mayor, you can take it after, I'd like to make a personal explanation regarding misrepresentations made about the motion on ABC Radio this morning.
I will go to that in a moment because I had Councillor Abrahimzadeh speaking next.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I've been using this centre for the past 10 or so years on a regular basis. I was there, I think probably would have been Thursday or Friday last week, and now I take my young son with me so that he can learn to swim. There is nothing I would hate than losing that centre. I don't want us to pour money down the drain by spending money on a facility that's about 50 years old, and for that money not to address anything significant. I remember the last time that centre had any sort of the renovation or capital expenditure on it would have been probably back in 2013 or 2014. And I remember it wasn't even 12 months after that I looked at the centre, and I think the only thing that still looked new and shiny was probably the paint on some of the beams that's holding up the roof. It is a centre that's that's well beyond its due-by date. And like I said, as a regular user for the past decade or so, I would hate to lose a facility like that. I think we as a capital city council do need a facility like that, but this is not a good way to spend ratepayers' money.
Thank you. Members, Councillor Hyde, did you wish to speak?
I need to make a personal explanation at the moment, Lord Mayor. Earlier today, Councillor Martin claimed that I had, and if you listen to it, almost single-handedly stripped out $16 million worth of expenditure from the long-term financial plan and from the Aquatic Centre. Of course, we know that the renewals for the Adelaide Aquatic Centre that sit in the long-term financial plan are $135,000 for 21-22. 3.315 million and a further $148,000 for equipment in 22-23. Building renewals in 23-24 come in at 1.866 million, and then there's a further 76,000 to be spent on equipment. The total of that, which then comes to over $5.5 million. As such, obviously, I've been grossly misrepresented, and the truth has been grossly misrepresented on radio this morning, and I welcome Councillor Martin clarifying those comments now.
Members? So were you asking for a clarification from Councillor Martin on those comments? I'm not sure that I think when you do a personal explanation, that's it. It's not to be debated. So no, it's you've made your statement, thank you. I'm looking to see if anybody else wants to speak to the revocation. So I have Councillor Knoll and then Deputy Lord Mayor.
I think we need to go back to the whole purpose of what we were doing in regards to the Aquatic Centre. And we think back, one, the long-term financial plan only deals with replacement like for like. So therefore, if we're no longer intending to do that, then that's no longer a valid number. So what we're trying to achieve by having changed it, and it's about putting in a financial model that'll work, and that is about we wish to do something different. If we think about the monies expended and potential losses, we are working away. If we're putting it very simply, we are spending money that we could invest in another swimming centre. That was the whole purpose, for us to revisit this. What does a new financial model look like? How can we deliver an up-to-date swimming centre with better green credentials and all the rest? So we have yet to decide what our long-term plan is. So why do we put in a number that we haven't decided on? The moment we say this is what's going to happen, then that translates into the into a long-term financial plan. But the whole purpose is that we need to think of other ways of which we can provide the service of the swimming centre. And let us not forget, only by the numbers, only 9% of people visiting are for ratepayers. That's 200 visits per day. Out of the entire number, which are our ratepayers, who are the people that are funding this straight out by themselves. I mean, we inherited over the long term something that was a joint facility, and we ended up with this a very, very ancient and very inefficient swimming centre. So that's the whole purpose of why we're looking at the change. We open it up so that the management can look at what is it we're going to do different, so that they can come back to us. So until that moment arrives, then there's no need to put this in the long-term financial plan, because we haven't decided that this is a solution. And I think we'll wait for that great work that I'm expecting them to do, that we are going to deliver a swimming centre that focuses on our customers with services that they appreciate, and utilising all the opportunities, and that is whether it be through the various health and well-being that comes out of the various governments, in the money that they are offering and supporting with, so that people who have disability, etc., have services that they can use, and certainly enhance their quality of life and also their well-being. So all these things combined means that the motion that is is about us being ready to have a look at the other options, and then when we decide, then we can put the implications into our financial plan, which means we can then also deal with whatever the expectations are. It isn't complicated.
Thank you. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I understand it is a very loved centre. It is loved by everyone in South Australia. It is used by a wider community, and it is something that we all would love to continue seeing an aquatic centre in that space. And as rightly pointed out, we have allocated funds to the centre up until 2023-24, in which it comes back into council for us to discuss further the life of this centre. So we're not ignoring it. We are understanding that it has got extreme value to the community, but we are really considering our ratepayers in really talking about this in depth when the time comes. Yes, we hope that the government does come on board and support a new aquatic centre, as they did the first time it was built back in 1969. But for the reality is, and it is a reality, that the centre may need more work than what we're allocating than the $16 million. It may. But at this point in time, we are putting it within our plan to consider the option in 23-24. So I don't believe we're ignoring it. I don't believe we're abandoning it. I don't believe that we are not considering this as a valuable asset. We're just being mindful that we need to be smart about what we're going to be delivering in this space, and consider it when the option arises, as stated in 23-24.
Thank you. Councillor Moran?
Yes. Look, I think there's no doubt about quibbling about, are we taking money out to do the new centre? We haven't decided on the next one yet. We're not funding it. To starve the aquatic centre, we only have one aquatic centre now. To starve it of funds is to lead to the inevitable closure much sooner than we've built a new aquatic centre. The government's unlikely to give us rivers of money. They've built their state centre down at Marion, and that's where they've poured their money. This is a recreational facility now for the local residents and the neighbours. We're putting the cart before the horse. We've got to fund this centre while it's our only centre, and fund it well. It is reaching the end of life, and that's why it's going to need a continuous stream of money until a new aquatic centre is built. So let's not put lipstick on a pig. We are starving this centre of money. It needs it to stay open, and this will lead to its early closure.
Members, if not, Councillor Hyde.
Lord Mayor, we're not starving the aquatic centre of money. No, I haven't. I made a personal explanation.
Yes, thank you. I did just check with governors.
So, Lord Mayor, we're not starving the aquatic centre of money. In fact, we have $5.5 million in there leading up to the end of the 23-24 financial year. That's quite a ways away. In actual fact, if the state government want to come to the table and we get a wriggle on, we can actually have a centre, if not majority built, then finished by that point in time. So I don't see this as a way to try and deprive the community of an aquatic centre. That is not our aim. If that was the council's aim, they would have voted to do that. What this does is draw a line in the sand and makes it very clear to the community, to our stakeholders and to the government that we cannot keep putting money into a facility which is past the end of its life. It's not at the end of it, it's past the end of its life. And Councillor Moran talks about an early closure. Well, it wouldn't be early. It wouldn't be early at all, because it is past the end of its useful life. That's the advice that we keep getting. That's why we have to spend millions of dollars on it in the coming few years. And that's why we've had to spend tens of millions of dollars on it in the previous few years. So it's about us having a conversation with the state government to talk about funding priorities here. And as Councillor Moran correctly highlights, yes, there is a state aquatic centre in Marion. It services that community. I think the work that's been done by the Office of Rec and Sport clearly shows there is demand for an indoor pool. And an aquatic centre here in this part of Greater Metropolitan Adelaide, servicing the communities projecting further north. And if you look at the user data, that's definitely where the lion's share, and when I say the lion's share, I mean 93%. I think Councillor Knoll said 9%. The updated figures, I think, we're at 7%. 7% of users are ratepayers of the City of Adelaide. And certainly, I'm not saying that we should not be open to running a community facility at a loss. It's a community facility. But the question is, what is the loss? How big should the loss that our ratepayers bear be? And then what is the opportunity cost of that loss to those people? What could we otherwise deliver for the community with that money sitting in our budget and delivering other programs and other initiatives? That's ultimately what it's a question of. Sadly, resources are scarce. We will need assistance to rebuild the aquatic centre. Certainly, actually, having said that, we have fixed our debt position so much so that we could look at putting more funds towards the building of an aquatic centre. But it's an aquatic centre that services communities from outside Adelaide. Ergo, we will need assistance to get it done. This is about providing certainty to particularly government stakeholders, being the Commonwealth Government and the state government, so they understand what our intent is. Because I bet you, if we just say we'll keep patching it up, we'll keep patching it up, we'll keep patching it up, the answer from them will be, oh, that's great, you've got it sorted, you don't need us. And this is what the original motion sought to address, and that's why I would say do not rescind that original motion.
Thank you. Councillor Martin, to sum up.
Well, thank you, Lord Mayor. And Councillor Hyde has provided a crystal clear understanding of what his intent was with this motion on the 13th of April, which was supported by our colleagues from the group whose name shall not be spoken. The fact of the matter is that it is being actively contemplated that there's an opportunity cost. While ever we put money into the aquatic centre, we are not putting money into other priorities. And as Councillor Hyde said, is this a priority? Well, the answer is no. According to this motion, this council will not support the aquatic centre beyond June 2022. That's what it says. That's what the
Sorry,
intention.
Lord Mayor, that is not what it says.
Well, Lord Mayor,
I would implore the councillor to look at, through you, Lord Mayor, I implore the councillor to look at 4 in the motion, not 3 in the motion.
Lord
3
Mayor,
is
he's just
affirming an
taking
intent.
time away from me debating by debating.
I'm happy for him to reclaim the time, but to clarify, Lord Mayor, he's reading things that are not in there. 4 is the substantive. 4 is what deals with the capital works in the aquatic centre, not 3. 3 is talking about intent and where we would like to take things.
He's dancing with you, Lord Mayor. He's just playing a little dance. He's playing.
Or dancing, singing and dancing. Councillor Martin.
And some singing too, I'm sure. The fact of the matter is that he has taken up my time and everybody else's by denying that 3 says affirms its intent to keep the aquatic centre functioning while a new centre is constructed on condition, and this is Council's position, on condition that the City of Adelaide has a viable funding model that is substantial enough to construct a new centre by the 30th of June. That's it. If we do not have, according to the policy of the City, as a consequence of that motion, a viable funding option substantial enough to construct a new centre by June 30th, 2022, we will not have an intent to keep the aquatic centre functioning. That's what it says. Now, all of this slippery explanations that are going on here, oh, we love our centre. Last time we saw anything shiny and new was years ago, but we wouldn't do anything to endanger that facility, which is much loved. Although, as Councillor Hyde observes, it's not used by enough locals to justify it being a project for the City of Adelaide. Look, this is clear. Anyone in North Adelaide listening to this debate, and I will point them to this debate and the recording, will understand that this council is abandoning the aquatic centre by starving it of funds. You can rescind this, or you can take a pragmatic approach or at least take the pragmatic approach and rescind this. And then Lord Mayor, may I have another minute?
Give him 2.
You may. Can I have a show of hands, please, for a minute? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. The pragmatic approach is to rescind this, to rescind the notion that somehow we will not support the continued operation beyond the 30th of June under any circumstances, and that further we will provide the capital it needs to continue to function while we look for the funding for a new centre. Instead of it being either or, either we get the funding and this closes, or the alternative, which is to support the centre and seek funding, we should be doing the latter. We should be supporting the centre, not starving it of funds, ensuring it continues to attract patrons, and at the same time we should be looking for the funding and the model to go forward, not starving this, not leaving this to wither. And that's the intention of this motion.
Members, no, you can't speak. You summed up. I'm sorry.
I don't want to speak. I have to ask the administration a question. It will affect.
No, he summed up. I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm sorry.
It will affect my vote because Lord Mayor, if the administration
I'm sorry, Councillor Hyde. You cannot. He has summed up.
So I can't ask a question.
No, you may not.
No information.
No, you may not. You had a chance to do that before. Thank you. Members, we're voting on the rescission motion before you. Those in favour of the rescission? Those against?
Division.
The rescission is lost.
Division.
Council members, a division has been requested on the revocation motion. All those in favour, please stand and remain standing till all names have been called.
Councillor Moran, Councillor Mackie, Councillor Donovan and Councillor Martin.
Thank you, members. We've got weekend parking controls, item 17.2, Councillor Martin. Members. Deputy Lord Mayor, if I have to call you again.
I'm sorry, Lord Mayor.
Well, thank you. You can be sorry and be quiet.
Stop bullying.
Councillor Martin. A bit more singing and dancing. You have 17.2.
Oh, I do too.
Weeknight parking controls.
Yes, look, Lord Mayor, may...
Councillor Martin, I'm going to ask you to withdraw that last remark, accusing the Deputy Lord Mayor, in jest, even though it might have been, of bullying. I would ask for the record, can you withdraw that remark, please? Sorry, Councillor Moran, I'm not talking to you. Sorry, Councillor Moran. Councillor Martin, I'm going to ask you to withdraw that remark, please.
Lord Mayor, I felt like I was being bullied.
That's a fairly big allegation, Councillor Martin.
I felt like I was being bullied.
I did too. Well, then, Lord Mayor, I felt like I've been bullied because he's twisted the whole...
She shouted.
Councillors.
Twisted it all. And it's shameful.
Lord Mayor, I'm entitled.
Councillors, could you all be quiet? You are not shouting across the chamber. And, you know, I love the fact you're finding this so humorous. It is theatre, we get that, and we're all performing beautifully tonight. So I will actually ask you to... So if there's any breach of the Code of Conduct, which that is, of course, that has to be taken up outside of the chamber. We all know the process, and you can actually do that through a Code of Conduct. We are not going to persecute that in the chamber.
I don't understand. Please explain.
I'm sure you do.
No, seriously. Please explain what you said.
I'll be Code of Conduct as soon as this meeting finishes.
We are going to motion on notice 17.2, weekend parking controls. Thank you, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. May I proceed to speak or not?
Once you have a seconder, Councillor Martin, you can speak.
Do you want me to ask for that, or will you as chair?
No, I can ask for that. That's actually mine. Oh, that's all right. Actually, you would seek a seconder, but Councillor Moran, I saw your hand go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, the problem this motion seeks to address is, sorry, Lord Mayor, I dropped the pen, is the best illustration of the financial quagmire which the city has been led into. The debt that we have, the majority of which was fuelled by operating budget deficits, required lots of cuts to staff. Hundreds of staff were shown the door in the last 12, 18 months, and then there were cuts to services. And Lord Mayor, that is not controversial, that's exactly what's been going on. One of those big cuts was to do away with our then entire night parking inspector team, with the consequence that we do not, in this capital city, have a regular roster for parking inspectors across the city every Sunday, Thursday from 7 p.m. until the start of business the following day. Now, for many ratepayers who I've contacted, this is causing problems. People are parking in residential permit zones, and additionally, we're having problems with, for example, when there's an event on at Adelaide Oval, people continuing to park in 2-hour zones for much longer than that, denying parks to visitors and indeed patrons of businesses. And then we've also had instances of where people have had people parking in front of their driveways. And I have a text that came from one person who complained that there was somebody parking across their driveway. So they rang the City of Adelaide, as you would expect to do, and were told, and I'm quoting from the text, "There's no one on after 7, sorry. We haven't got any inspectors to come. Is it an emergency? Are they blocking your driveway?" Caller said, "I wasn't sure if I could get out." They then said, "You can call the police in the case of an emergency, but they'll only come to see if they see fit. We do have people later on Friday and Saturday, I'm sorry." The caller said, "Do I call you if it's still there in the morning?" And the council officer said, "Yes, from 8:30 we can help." Now, that is not just one instance. I have spoken to a large number of ratepayers, some of whom you will know, who've had the same problem. And so, Lord Mayor, we need to do something to fix it. It's not satisfactory that there are cuts to parking inspectors so that people feel it's okay to overstay parking controls, to park in front of people's driveways, or to park in other ways that inhibit ratepayers either going about their lives or, in the case of business ratepayers, being able to ply their trade. Now, I have asked the administration how we can address this escalating problem, and I accept that the administration says it can't do as I asked in September, but October would be possible, and I'm happy with that. Any strategy that can help ratepayers who are frustrated by this substantial cut in amenity would be welcomed by them.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Moran, did you wish to speak?
Well, only to say that I can verify Councillor Martin's information that people are being inconvenienced. I've had a lot of complaints too. In fact, our driveway's been parked over. It is well known, I don't know how, well known out in the public that we don't have parking inspectors. I don't know how that information got out so quickly, but it has. And I think possibly because people have been inconvenienced and rung the council to get the inspectors out and found out that they haven't, and then they've told their neighbours. So it is a problem, and I think we have to address that.
Thank you, Councillor Moran. Councillor Martin and Councillor Moran, can we seek a variation so that it says report to the October Council if you're happy with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep, they would just make that adjustment. Councillor Moran, you're happy with that? Members? Councillor Hyde?
Lord Mayor, I was just going to ask if the administration could clarify on whether these claims of swinging the axe at various and entire teams. The level of service that Councillor Martin's describing, is that how far below is that below what ratepayers are used to?
Okay. Are you acting CE?
Thank you. Through the chair. From memory, we had for many years a very small night force that operated predominantly from midnight through the wee hours. Over time, that was changed because there wasn't any requirement for those officers to be working. At some point, that was outsourced to a company, and from memory, that also wasn't used very often, and that was skinny down to Friday nights and Saturday nights. In particular, when there could be issues around cars just being in the way. So I'm happy to flesh out a bit more of that in the report for the October meeting.
Members, any other comments? If not, I'll go back to the move to sum up. Councillor Martin?
Summed up.
Members to the vote, those in favour? Those against? That is carried. That takes us, members, to 17.3, Councillor Martin, City Connector lockdown services.
Look, Lord Mayor, I may be able to withdraw this, having read the administration comment, if I could confirm that the administration supports the intent of the motion and is actually engaged with SAPTA at this time.
Acting CE, if I could just...
I'm so sorry. I thought you were going to talk.
Would you like
yes, that's correct.
Okay, Lord Mayor. On the basis that the administration assures me that they're working on it and will come back to us informally with a report, I'll withdraw that.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. 17.3 withdrawn. That takes us to 17.4, Councillor Hyde, Adelaide free Wi-Fi. And I have Councillor Abraham as a seconder.
Thank you. Members, this one's fairly obvious. We are upgrading our Wi-Fi. We are putting it on our optic fibre network that we have throughout the city. That's a very commendable initiative, and we started doing that. We negotiated to have that put into the Adelaide City deal, which is fantastic. However, subsequent to that, what we do know, and it's excellent that a lot of areas, or all areas that are currently covered, will get excellent speeds and an improved user experience. But what I think we should turn our attention to at the same time, noting that we've liberated our balance sheet of in excess of $200 million worth of debt, we can actually turn our mind towards some further capital works to increase the number of access points on the 10 gig network so that we can have a better coverage. And when I talk about better coverage, I'm thinking about particularly places like Gooja Street, and as well, that's an area where we see, in non-COVID times, we see a lot of international students who might not have the typical phone plan and data on that phone plan. We see a lot of international visitors there, but also elsewhere in the city, along our main streets. I note that Melbourne Street only has 2 access points at the moment, and that's pegged to continue. O'Connell Street has few access points as well. So I think if we're going to do this, we need to do it properly. That was the spirit within which we brought the changes and improvements to the network and put them into the city deal. And that is the spirit that we should draw on to say that if we're going to have Adelaide free Wi-Fi, let's make it fast and let's make it let's make the coverage as broad as possible.
Councillor Abraham, members, anyone wish to speak to it? If not, I'll go to Councillor Hyde to sum up.
Summed up.
Members to the vote, those in favour, those against, that is carried. That takes us to 17.5, Councillor Hyde, effects of historic asset sales.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. This is a fairly straightforward motion. It's not asking for anything other than an investigation. Sorry, did I have a
Thank you. I have a seconder in Councillor Abraham.
It's not asking for anything over and above an investigation. What we do know is that a lot of property has been sold by previous councils. Previous councils have severely depleted our balance sheet, in my view, selling what on face value appears to be about a quarter of the city's net saleable assets the hiving off of public assets, and to what end? Well, the answer, Lord Mayor, is that I don't know, and that without the benefit of a proper investigation, the administration won't be able to tell us either. Now, we know that funds are treated in the way that the Treasury policy advises. We know that for the duration of some of those asset sales, the Treasury policy has advised that they be reinvested into income-generating streams. Well, we know that that hasn't happened because we inherited a structural deficit from the previous council. And as you look at it, you'll see there are two assets on there which generated a substantial amount of revenue. And we haven't actually acquired any new revenue streams in a very, very long time. So it's no wonder that we inherited that structural deficit, which has now been corrected. Nevertheless, Lord Mayor, I think it's very, very important, so that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past, that we dig back through history, through the agendas, through the decisions that were made, to understand what was the decision-making matrix that led councillors to what I'm sure they thought was a very logical move in front of them, to sell off over $110 million worth of assets, and then to not reinvest that money into other income-generating assets. Now, it could be that there were projects that they were investing in that they thought would deliver a return. And if there are those instances there, I'd be very interested to look at them, look at the business cases surrounding them, and to understand why they didn't deliver a return, so that we can hopefully not make those mistakes in the future. It could be the case that the council at the time wanted it for an infrastructure project or this and that. Some commentators will call them vanity projects, others will call them much needed public infrastructure. Well, we can sort of form our own opinion on that, so long as we have the information in front of us. And then the motion also seeks to deduce how it affected our, if I could just have 30 more seconds.
Members, if I could just, thank you, one more minute.
How it affected our cash position, and whether it actually impacted our deficit in any way. I'd be really, really interested to know if historic asset sales have, for want of a better term, covered up historic deficits that the city may have had, noting that on these figures we were selling just under $10 million worth of assets every year. So it really, really makes you wonder. That's the spirit within which this is brought. It's fairly straightforward. I'll be very interested to see the investigation, as I hope other members will be as well.
Thank you. Councillor Abrahamsdale. Members. Councillor Martin.
Look, I wonder if the mover would accept a slight variation and addition, so that to give effect to his request for details of infrastructure projects delivered, that we put in a G saying a list of infrastructure projects delivered in the previous 15 years, including redevelopments. No, and that exactly sums up the circumstance, Lord Mayor. This is, I didn't quite understand what it was all about, but I think I've got it now. This is a kind of a war crimes trial for previous councils, the assertion being that they have somehow squandered tens of millions of dollars. Now, I've got to say to you, I'm not here to defend councils of which I was not a member, but I do think that if this were to be a fair process, and not just a political exercise as it is, not just a cynical political exercise as it is, we would ask the administration to have a look at what previous councils can lay claim to in the years leading up to our debt-free position. Now, we didn't have a systemic debt problem. In June 2017, we were completely debt-free. The debt has really only arisen because of the purchase of 88 O'Connell Street during the last term of council, and then it's ballooned through a series of operating deficits and because of, to a lesser extent, COVID. Now, the problem is in this, fundamentally, is that it ignores that councils previous to this one had funded from their funds from the operating budget redevelopments. Rundle Mall, I think there were two. One of them was $30-odd million. Victoria Square, I think that was about $35 million. There was also Adelaide free Wi-Fi. That was an enormously expensive exercise undertaken, I think, during the time of Mayor Harbison. Then we've also had cycling infrastructure and other redevelopments and infrastructure projects which were developed and presented within the context of the available funds. Now, if you just discount those and argue, as we've just heard, somehow that councils have got some sort of problem with the way in which they've operated, you are in fact seeking to ignore the significant achievements in infrastructure that in fact I don't think we've been able to meet yet. In fact, I can't, and I might be wrong, I can't think of a significant infrastructure project this council has delivered. But if the mover was prepared to accept an explanation of those things, then it would demonstrate to all of us that this was indeed a sincere endeavour to find out if there is a problem. But in fact, it's just a cynical political exercise.
Members, if not, I'll go back to Councillor Hyde to sum up.
As far as grand infrastructure projects, Councillor Martin is discounting the mountains that this council chamber had to move to dig the council back out of a very precarious financial position and debt position over the next 10 years. There's a big infrastructure project for you. But look, Lord Mayor, this is just a report and an investigation. There's nothing that should be controversial about it, although I appreciate the councillor is trying to insert the controversy in there. It's not a witch hunt, but even if it were, wouldn't you want to know? Wouldn't one want to know what the decision-making matrix was? Because there's no worth looking at the entirety of a $200 million budget for each of those years. What we're looking at is our asset base, our saleable asset base. Why would the council? I want to know, because I was genuinely shocked, Lord Mayor. I was genuinely shocked. I asked the question out of curiosity more than anything, and then to see the answer to the question come back and say over $110 million, I was flabbergasted. I don't know how, and moreover, Lord Mayor, a lot of it's happened, and yet here we are. We look at returning the City Beach sign to its original intent, which was something that would have a building on it. That's why the council bought it. It was a strategic acquirement at the time. We look at returning that sign to what it was meant to be. And obviously that's a small site compared to the things that we've sold previously. Yet, what about the public interest in understanding why this council has, over the course of many years, successive councils, successive Lord Mayors and what have you, decided to sell down a quarter of its balance sheet? Why would it sell down a quarter of its balance sheet? I would like to know. Because I think, obviously, councils, you see a relatively high turnover compared to the number of spots that there are on this council, and the corporate knowledge is not necessarily great. And I want to know, I want to be assured that councillors will not repeat the mistakes, what could be mistakes. I'm not saying that, I'm not saying no. On face value, it certainly piques my interest, and I wonder how this could all be justified. But I want to know what the decisions were, why they made the decisions, what evidence there was for them. Was the money meant to be used for something else? Did that eventuate? Did it not eventuate? Was there always, and I remember when I originally came to council, Lord Mayor, the administration and others would often talk about, oh yes, we've got to get onto income generating. Well, this council is finally getting on to income generating, and I assume that the reason that wanting to invest in income generating assets sits in the mind of a lot of people here in the administration is because they kept saying that for a long time, and because of the good work of Mr. McCready, we're actually doing that now. But that's what I see when I look at it, Lord Mayor. Nothing cynical about it. I want answers. I think our ratepayers would want answers as well, because this monumental sell down has occurred without any great scrutiny, without any great knowledge or coverage in the public, in the media, and I think it needs to be brought to light.
Members, to the vote, those in favour, those against, that is carried.
Council members, division has been called on the motion. All those in favour, please stand and remain standing until all names have been called.
Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillor Kerr, Councillor Ho, Councillor Donovan, Councillor Knoll, Councillor Hyde and Councillor Abrahimzadeh.
Members, that takes us to item 18 on the agenda, which motioned without notice. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yes, Lord Mayor, I've got one without notice. I've circulated to administration earlier.
Thank you, and I did see this and approve it as it's time restrained.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to read this out. Proves that the administration hold and promote a flower day to be funded with the existing activation and marketing budgets to coincide the recently announced Bloom Festival to be held during spring 2021. Notes that as part of the Flower Day event, administration look at ways that flowers can be showcased in the public realm and encourage residents, businesses, schools, events, organisations across the city to place flowers inside and outside their venues to celebrate and add colour and vibrancy to the city streets. Request administration to keep council informed by e-news on plans for Flower Day as they are confirmed. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you. I had Councillor Abrahimzadeh's hand. So if you'd like to speak to that.
The result of this motion came about with a recent announcement from the state government in regards to the Bloom Festival, which, as we saw, that a lot of the items on there had anything to do with flowers, but it brought the conversation to the Flower Day that we used to have in the city of Adelaide. And I saw a lot of conversation happening in social media in regards to it, and I thought that it would be a good way to coincide what we did in the past for Flower Day and have all of the community involved and to make it, and hopefully if it's a success, we can have it as an annual spring festival for the city of Adelaide.
Councillor Abrahimzadeh, did you wish to speak?
I do suffer from hay fever, but I still support this motion.
Okay. Members, would anybody else like to speak? Thank you. Councillor Hyde.
Are there any flowers in particular that we would be celebrating? Or how does it... I'm struggling to picture it, I'm sorry.
If you have a look at the flowers that are planted all through the city, of which there are many, no, it doesn't have to be any particular flower.
Okay. If I could ask a question through you, Lord Mayor of the Mover, is this another chronicle in Hanging Basket saga? Are we seeking hanging baskets?
I think is that a rhetorical question?
No,
that may be
legitimate.
something that businesses, schools, residents or organisations choose to do.
All right, has my full support.
Members, if Councillor Donovan.
Thanks, Lord Mayor.
Thank you.
It's a bit hazy. I'm in the existing budget. I'm just curious, is there a cap on that? How would administration read that? I don't know anything about the past Flower Day, so I don't know how successful it was. I don't know what it did. I don't know whether this is something that would actually lead to any benefits. So having it thrown up like this and within existing budgets, what's going to be sacrificed to do this Flower Day? I'm not necessarily for or against it, but I'd like some more information on how this would be interpreted.
I can only go through to the third point in that, is that the administration would come back to us with what it is, and going historically, it was something that the community engaged with.
And so why was it ceased? Do we know?
There was an organising committee, which was, I did actually have the history, I don't have it with me, but there was an organising committee. It was run by the City of Adelaide. The City of Adelaide then decided it cost too much to clear the dead flowers away. It went then to the Festival of Arts and was incorporated into the 1960 Festival of Arts. Was run by, I can't remember the committee chair's name, but it was run for many years and ceased, I think, in 1975, 1978. But this can be anything we want it to be.
So the just to further my questions, the motion doesn't call for any information to come back to us to approve. So it's still, we don't know how much this is going to cost us.
If it helps, I'm happy if you want to add that in.
Great, that'd be excellent.
If I could actually interject there, if we wait for a report to come back, we will miss the Spring Festival, which is in September. Sorry, if there's any comment from admin,
could we get a
make
comment just on any costing cap that might be foreseen with this? I don't know what the amount is that remains within existing activation and marketing budgets that hasn't already been allocated.
Acting C.
Thank you through the chair. What I could do is share what is existing and what we propose to do with members via e-news. The money, the dollars associated with that, some of that will have already been allocated, but not all of it. And so the advice to the Deputy Lord Mayor was if you want to do something quickly, then we would need to just reprioritise within those budget lines.
That makes it very difficult to vote because we don't know what's going to be reprioritised out of the budget lines. I possibly will. All right, thank you.
If there's no other speakers, I'll go back to the Deputy Lord Mayor to sum up.
I understand the concerns in regards to the budget implication. I did run this by with administration, and this is the way that it was presented to me to present it to Chamber as a motion. It is something that we can build on with the current Bloom Festival that is going to be happening this year, and we all want to continue increase vibrancy and colour and a reason for people to come into the city and enjoy and involve community groups and schools and all the businesses, and we could make it something that is favourable for people to come and enjoy in the city. I understand your hesitation in regards to the aspects of the budget being timely. This is the way that it was presented as the best way forward to have something that we can have in coinciding with the Bloom Festival.
Thank you, members. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Those against?
Division.
That is carried.
Council members, the division has been called on the motion. All those in favour, please stand and remain standing till all names have been called.
Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillor Khera, Councillor Ho, Councillor Knoll, Councillor Hyde and Councillor Abrahimzadeh.
Members, we need to now go back into confidence to continue the discussion on item 12.2.3. So I will ask for a mover. Thank you, Councillor Khera. Seconder, Councillor Abrahimzadeh. Does anyone wish to speak?
Yes.
If Councillor Martin.
I just want to reiterate again, Lord Mayor, this should not be in confidence. It should be in public.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. If not, I'll go back to the move to sum up. Members, to the vote. Those in favour, those against. That is carried. I will now ask any public or staff that's not associated with this item, 12.2.3, to leave the chamber. The streaming will also cease while Council considers this last item on the agenda, and then we will reopen at the conclusion.